how should oil markets price in the Iran factor?
The Iran factor is such that Tehran has made a decision that they want to ramp up production to 4 million barrels per day, which is essentially what their level was before the nuclear standoff, and they were clobbered with sanctions. Those sanctions started hurting around 2013, 2014, but now Iran has been welcomed back to the international fold. And I think the logic in Iran is that why should they hold back? They want to ramp up their production, and the Iran factor is that we may not get there fairly soon, but their intention is that they want to get to 4 million barrels per day by at some point in 2017, and I don't think nobody's going to begrudge them that. Perhaps people might begrudge them, but nobody can stop them.
The tension between Iran and Saudi Arabia would normally drive up oil prices, but yet they're still low. Why is that?
Because we have got incremental barrels still coming on stream, and at this point in October 2015 we had something like in excess of 3 million barrels of extra oil coming to the market every day. Right now, even with all the production cuts that we've seen, there's still at least 1.1 to 1.2 million barrels per day of extra oil coming to the market. Now, with that kind of room, with Saudi production at a record high and the whole market thinking the Iranians are pumping like anything, that's why it's not working.
Saudi Arabia and the United States want to hurt Russia and Iran. Is that a rumour?
Well, I've heard that theory before. It doesn't wash in many ways, because there is evidence that the Saudis and the Russians have tried to cooperate. It's failed, but they've tried to work together. It's almost always failed. But to assume that the Americans and the Saudis came together to somehow hurt the Russians would be too simplistic an assumption.
Could you tell us a bit about the geopolitical stance between Iran and Saudi Arabia?
It's a classic Shia-Sunni tussle. One side will back Hezbollah, the other side will back another rebel group. Yemen seems to be the basket case at the moment, with the Saudis backing one side, the Iranians backing the other side, and all sorts of atrocities being committed in the middle. Both Tehran and Riyadh also accuse each other of infiltrating the others, sending out their own security agents. Of course, the Saudis have traditionally been backed by the US, and the Iranians have basically faced various sanctions over the years. So if you looked at Iranian discourse, there's a lot of sniping at Saudi Arabia, whereas if you look at the Saudi discourse, they just don't trust Iran. And these problems then sort of manifest themselves when they all meet at OPEC Secretariat in Vienna. And this goes back, this is not something that has started overnight. We're going back decades, and history is the biggest problem. I don't see these differences being ironed out anytime soon.
Saudi Arabia and Iran are engaged in a war between the two sects of Islam. Could this escalate and lead to outright war?
It's a difficult one to say, because I think it will probably stay where it is, like a proxy war. The real danger here is that if the proxy war morphs into something much bigger and uglier, then obviously the whole world's in trouble, because there are different sides, different backers and different sides, and a whole lot of complexities in the Middle East that factor in. It could happen, but right now it looks like it will remain like a very ugly proxy war.
So if the worst happens and it unravels and becomes bigger, what would the impact be for us globally?
Well, to begin with, if it becomes a direct Saudi-Iranian conflict, you probably see at least a $20 appreciation in the oil price. It is precisely for that reason that it will perhaps not happen. There's also been several ancillary effects. If you look at the map of the Middle East, the Iranians often threaten to block shipments through the Persian Gulf.
Right.
For starters, the US Navy will not tolerate that. And in any case, as Iran has come back into the international community, those threats have declined. But the Saudis, the Emiratis, and a lot of other players are taking corrective mechanisms. They're building pipelines towards the tip of the Arabian Peninsula, so they can actually bypass the Persian Gulf for their shipments. Especially the United Arab Emirates already has a pipeline from to its other coastline to move the oil. So there are a lot of implications, a lot of things that are happening. But I think if there is a direct conflict, we'd probably have a lot more on our plate than to worry about a $20 appreciation in the oil price.
Iran sanctions have been lifted. You touched upon it before. What does this mean in terms of the production of oil?
The classic problem Iran has is one of infrastructural impediments. And the way I see it is that it's the infrastructure that is holding back the Iranians ramping up production to 4 million barrels per day. Their classic problem is they need to invest at a very fast and very furious pace. And they're opening up the doors to the international community. They're asking the European oil majors first off to come in rather than US oil majors who still have legal impediments for them to do business with Iran. If they invest in infrastructure, they can ramp up their production, but I think the infrastructure hold them back, which is why I think they will not get to 4 million barrels per day anytime soon.